Welcome back to Alpine Garage Sports, folks. We are doing something special today. I told you in past videos that we have the best commenters in the business, and a lot of them have really good comments. Some of them have questions, but I thought let's do Mailbox. So we're going to do Alpine's Mailbox, and we're going to talk about today 5 comments that folks have left on various videos. We're going to do that, and I mixed them up a little bit to kind of get a variety of different comments and questions on a variety of different subjects. So let's start with the first one from Thomas Kerrigan, and this was just the other day. Said, it would be a fun day if Coach Prime would take his team on a field day trip to the trailhead of Mount Elbert this summer. They would start at 10,000 feet and hike up to the top of 14,439 foot Mount Elbert. It takes about 6 or 8 hours round trip. So this sounds like, Thomas, you have done Mount Elbert. And for those of you who aren't aware, Colorado has over 50 14,000 foot peaks, the most in the continental United States. So bagging 14ers is a term here, and it is something that a lot of us do in order to take on one of the more challenging things that you can do here in Colorado, which is bag a 14er. Now, 14,000 feet is very high up, obviously, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's difficult. If you're acclimated to the altitude and you're in decent physical shape, you can summit a 14er pretty easily in some cases. And Mount Elbert, being the tallest of all of the 14,000 foot peaks in Colorado, you would think would be hard, but it's actually relatively easy compared to others. When you climb 14ers, when you climb mountains in general, there are classes of climbing. Class 5 would be a very difficult climb. Class 1 would be a very easy climb. Mount Elbert is like in primarily a 1 and a 2, so it's very easy. The difficult part about it is it's a long hike, and there is a lot of elevation gain from trailhead to top of mountain. So you're not hiking the entire 14,000 feet, obviously, because we're much higher than that in Colorado as a base, but you're starting at around the 10,000 foot. So here's the question is, would Coach Prime take his team, or would one of the coaches take their team to Mount Elbert to do a hike? And this is kind of funny because I brought this up to Coach Pollock in one of his videos, actually, that I could take them, or they should go on trips in Colorado and film them as just a fun thing to do in the summer, especially when there's not a lot going on. And that I could be the guide, but there's probably plenty of people at University of Colorado that could help them out in this regard. But one of them would be bagging a 14er. And doing this with a group of athletes would be some serious fun. Here is the problem, though, is that you have to get to the trailhead at least at 5 o'clock in the morning, because you have to be up and off of the peak by no later than noon, because in Colorado, storms build almost every day in the afternoon, and lightning strikes, we have more people die of lightning strikes here in Colorado than any other state. It's actually a thing. So we have to be up and off, which means we have to get there from Boulder in a quick amount of time. And Elbert is a pretty far away mountain considering that fact. I would say, yes, Thomas, they should absolutely do it. And I would volunteer to take them out on this. What I would probably do, though, is I'd probably take them to Mount Bierstadt, which is a lot closer. It's only an hour and 40 minutes from Boulder. And it is also less elevation gain from trailhead to top than most of the other 14ers are. So you can bag Bierstadt pretty easily, comparatively speaking, and it would be a great feather in the cap of the coaches and the players who do it. So that's what I would suggest. And if Coach Prime wanted to come, I think we all know that he's a couple of toes down from most of us, and he had some pretty extensive surgery on his leg there, and blood clots are apparently an issue as well, which is a problem, especially when you get to altitude because of the lower pressure. I think I might go to that in another video, because it's going to be kind of techie and tweaky, and I don't know that a lot of people are going to like that. I would love to get Coach Prime to the top of a 14er, and I've got several different ways that I think we can make that work. All right, number 2, LIddell. You said, Chris, can you please explain the changes CU made for making transfers easier? Did CU lower the GPA requirements, add majors, accept other schools' curriculum? I heard that there was a major reason why CU couldn't recruit players. Interesting in knowing what Coach Prime worked out before his coming. So, Linda, you're absolutely correct. In fact, this was something that was a big topic of discussion last year, before and after the Carterell firing. A lot of people for years have been talking about the very difficult transfer rules that CU has in place. Now, this is a bigger scope, and I'm not going to go way down the rabbit hole, but this is a thing, and it was changed right around when Coach Prime came on. But Colorado, for those of you who may not know, has always been considered a public Ivy school. If you look at the buildings around CU, you kind of get the feeling that this looks like an Ivy League school. But since the mid-'80s, it's been known as a public Ivy. What does that mean? It means it has higher academic standards than most public schools, and that the education level that you're getting at the University of Colorado is very similar to an Ivy League school without paying the same amount of money that you would going to an Ivy League school. So that stated, it's always had a little bit of prestige to it compared to, for instance, I'm not going to name another school because I'm going to offend another school, but it's always been very high echelon schools in a public school format. It's also a member of the AAU. It's a pretty distinct designation, actually, a membership, which includes schools like Harvard, Yale, and Princeton, but they're known as an academic research and education school. So you lay that platform down there, and then you add in some of the issues that we had in the early 2000s with recruiting, which got us into trouble with the NCAA, and a lot of other things happened where the school decided to implement a little bit more stringent transfer rules. You add those two things together, and now you get into a very difficult recruiting environment. And then you add in the fact that we didn't have specific categories of degrees, which other schools have, which have to do with physical education and general education studies. And that has been blamed a lot, actually, over the last 20 years on us having a difficult time getting the athletes that we needed at this university. When Coach Prime came, along with that came the need to change those transfer rules, which again, this conversation started before Coach Prime came, but on Coach Prime's arrival, that's when it actually got changed. Now it makes it much easier for Coach Prime and the other coaches to have students that are in the transfer portal that are coming from universities that aren't identical to the University of Colorado to be able to transfer their credits into some of the majors that we have and get credit for those classes that they've taken. So this will absolutely 100% change us going forward. And this is another feather in Prime's cap, but also the AD Rick George as well for being an influence in changing this program. Now, the next one is from Tariq Smith. Now, he was referring to or making a comment on the Catapult system, which is that harness that you see people wearing in the CU training videos. He states specifically, does it monitor the heart since the player fell out on the field? It doesn't necessarily monitor their heart directly. You can add heart monitor straps to it. And then in that case, it actually syncs up with the Catapult system and sends that data to folks that are actually extrapolating that data and coming out with game plan for the development of these athletes and their performance. Now, I don't know if the University of Colorado actually uses that functionality on it, but it is available. So I just wanted to let you know about that. All right, now the next comment is from Alex Javalara Jr., which says, and this is on the Unboxing NIL Collectives video, says, Chris, your channel is top notch. Love it. Thank you, Alex. What are the chances of CU bringing back a baseball team? So I thought this was very interesting because CU dropped baseball in the 1980s. So this goes back to Title IX. So Title IX, for those of you who don't know, 1972 Title IX came out. And basically it said that we need to promote women's sports in the universities similar to the way that we do men's sports. Now, because of that, a lot of universities had to drop sports because they had to add women's versions of those sports or women's sports in general as an equivalent, which means you almost doubled your sports at that point. Now, because universities are businesses, they have to fund those. Because of that, they had to cut out sports. And so CU cut out wrestling, it cut out baseball, it cut out men's and women's gymnastics, I think it cut out swimming. So there are a lot of sports that it cut out. And although a lot of universities cut sports, they brought them back later on, but Colorado had decided not to do that. Now, what further exacerbates this is the fact that we went through a total renovation of our sports program in 2014 and built all new facilities, world-class facilities, which you can obviously see, but nowhere in there were baseball facilities built. So there's a couple of things that would have to take place in order for CU to get baseball back, in my opinion. The first thing is that baseball has been gone for CU for the longest time. And for it to bring back baseball, you're basically starting from scratch. Baseball in most universities is not profitable. And in order to build a profitable baseball team, in order for it to start returning revenue back and not just be a sponge, you're going to have to, A, be able to recruit good players. You're going to have to, B, have great facilities, all of which takes time and money in order to do. So that's the barrier to entry right there. The second one is that in order to add a men's sport, we need to add an equivalent women's sport. So when you're adding one sport, you're actually adding two sports. When you're talking about scholarships, scholarships cost money, and scholarships are very expensive. So that would be a very big factor in the cost that it's going to cost to get baseball back here. The second is you have to have facilities now potentially for two sports as well. And then the third would be the funding. Now, we talked about funding in the first 2 points, but what I mean by funding is there has to be a significant amount of funding from boosters and from alums, from businesses. That's what it's going to take to really start planning baseball for the future, which I think could be a possibility at CU. We're less than 30 minutes from downtown Denver where the Rockies play. There really should be no reason why we shouldn't have a baseball team. The recruiting aspect there would be immense. The solution would be to find an off-campus facility that we could build a baseball stadium, right? They have the best AD in college football with Rick George. His ability to get the funding going for our 2014 renovation of our facilities right now, he could do that again likely. And then you add Prime into this. Now, Prime obviously being a dual sport guy, baseball being one of his main things, you know he loves baseball still. He would be a gigantic personality and driver for this team to be able to get enough money to be able to start this sports program. And then you pull the Rockies into this. You use this as a potential Rockies recruiting base, and then all of a sudden now, within a few years, we might actually be able to get recruiting going well enough to be able to be competitive. Now, we are the only Pac-12 school without a baseball team. So that gives you some idea of where we may be going with this. It's a possibility, and Alex, that's the reason why I brought this up, is because I thought this was a great question. Next is a comment about the altitude affecting spring practice video that I did. Overwhelmingly, folks are saying, yeah, altitude can make the difference. We even have a former CU player that played under Bill McCartney that even said that same thing, said that it absolutely is. But then we have one of my best commenters and one of the biggest CU fans on this page right here who wanted to take the devil's advocate approach, which I very much appreciate. By the way, Buffalo Bill, thank you very much, because that's what this whole thing is built on. This is not just me telling you what's going on. This is a community of people that try to drive each other. And Buffalo Bill drove me on this one definitely, because I agree with his comment, and this is what it says. So I am going to be the naysayer here and get a little defensive on this topic, in my opinion. I have heard about this altitude advantage for decades. I don't buy this line of nonsense for seconds. Our yearly record for the last 20 years will back that up, but more specifically, the opposing teams bring guys in here from sea level, and these guys are in top shape. They are young, strong, and have lungs. These players are bigger, stronger, and faster than the Buffs have been in the last 20 years. They have come into Boulder and beat us up. USC, coming from sea level, has never lost in Boulder and has dominated us. Why? Talent level gap. Huge. Now, it goes into saying a few other things about this, but essentially his point is that why are you saying altitude advantage is an advantage when we've sucked for 20 years? Now, that's true. And I would say, Buffalo Bill, I 100% agree with you. In order for us to be competitive, we have to have top-level talent, we have to have top-level coaches, and we have to have top-level schemes and conditioning and training. Now, all of those things have to be in place for any outside factor to play a role. Now, in this particular case, we have not had good players. We have not had good coaching, and I'm going to say that in general. Our teams haven't done well, and that's usually tagged on coaching. And also the strength and conditioning probably hasn't been the best either. So when you don't have players of that talent, you don't have the coaching of that talent, you don't have the strength and conditioning and the schemes in place, then something small like altitude advantage is not going to make any difference whatsoever. And besides, teams have, over the last 30 years, knowing that this is an issue going up to altitude, have found ways to train to kind of offset that. And with technology coming into play now, it's less of a factor now than it was even 20 years ago. And these teams can also sub in and out more regularly and have a game plan to keep their players fresh. So there's a lot of ways to get around that. So Buffalo Bill is correct in that, is that the altitude advantage isn't going to decimate opponents coming in and give us the advantage when we suck. What it will do, though, is if two teams are evenly matched going into a game and they come to our field, we are going to have the advantage of altitude, meaning that in the later quarters, especially when you start to get fatigued, we are going to have a little bit of extra stamina that the other team may not have. And that could be the difference if the skill levels and the game is tight. That's where it plays into a factor. Plays into a factor only when we're good. It never plays a factor when we're not good. But guess what, guys? We are going to be good this year. This is the year when talent is going to be an issue. This is a year when coaching is not going to be an issue. This is a year when strength and conditioning are not going to be an issue. So when I made that video, I labeled it Coach Prime's Altitude Advantage. One of the reasons why I did that was specifically because of something that Buffalo Bill brings up, which is the fact that it's only an advantage for certain coaches with certain teams, because you have to be good enough to beat these other teams for this advantage to even take effect. But we're not only going to be good enough to take advantage of it this year, but we are going to make these teams suck wind. They're going to suck it. All right, that may have been going too far. Buffalo Bill, thank you for that comment. I saw the edited on there too, so I know that you initially unleashed and then pulled it back. That's usually what the edited means, and I appreciate you for that. Buffalo Bill, along with others, have really pushed this channel forward due to their comments and support, and I very much appreciate you guys. Well, this was a lot of fun. I hope you guys learned something out of this. I know I definitely did, and I'm going to make this a regular part of our channel. So I asked before, and I'm going to ask again, when I post these videos, please leave your constructive comments down there, because it's really fun to go through those and kind of pick apart, hey, where are we going with this channel and what are people looking for? And that helps a great deal. That's a wrap from Alpine Garage Sports. I hope you found this fun. If you are not already subscribed, this is a fantastic time to do it. Leave your comment down below. We may actually feature it in another mailbox segment here on Alpine Garage Sports. And we'll see you in the next video. And if you haven't already heard, we coming.